Hi there folks, today's video is on basslines. It could have come under texture, but I've put it under harmony. It's also got melodic elements, but because we're going to be talking about chords, as usual, it's gone under harmony. So here's the definition. Bonus points if you can tell me what that bassline is. And here are the things which we are going to cover. So if you want to go back and have a checklist, screenshot that and you can use those techniques. We're about to cover them now. For today's purposes, I've done 4 different genres and every single one of them follows the same chord progression. We're working in E minor and the chords go 1, 4, 3, 6. E minor, A minor, G major, C major. And that sounds like this. Now, first thing to get right is to put the root notes in underneath the chords. So let's hear the root note by itself. And here's what that sounds like with some instruments over the top. This is the same set of notes with a funky rhythm added. One thing that I should say is I've also doubled that line with double basses an octave lower. So if you are writing for strings, that's an easy arrangement technique for you to use. Next thing you want to think about, and this is a really easy tip to make you sound like you know exactly what you're doing, is you want to watch the note length. So this is exactly the same bass line again, but we're making sure that beat 3 this time is really short. In the previous example here, beat 3 each time is long. So the note duration really makes a difference. So here's the long version again. Here's the same thing, but beat 3 this time is really short. Okay, so being short really makes a difference. This is because bass waveforms are very large, and if you get busy you take up a lot of room. So if you want to create space for everything else to be heard, keep your bass line tidy by balancing the long notes to the short notes. Right, here is some other examples. Here is in a sort of R&B type style, just root notes with a funky rhythm. Here is the same principle, root notes with a slightly funky rhythm on an 808 style bass. I'm not an expert in this, but it does show you that the technique works. And here is the same thing again, but in a more rock and roll kind of style. Here the emphasis is important to give it that driving rhythms that Educast talk about. The first 2 bars I've really emphasized being on the beat. In the second 2 bars I've emphasized being off the beat. I'm also going long, short, and in this one I'm going short, long, and you'll notice that it really changes the feel. So we're using root notes, we're using a slightly funky rhythm, making sure that it's balanced so everything's paired, it's not a continuous invention of new rhythms, we are repeating little cells. Now we need to start thinking about using some different notes as well. We have a really easy choice. You should be able to see on the table below that in the first chord you've got the root note of E and its fifth is B. So here is E. Now if we continue to apply the funky rhythm principle and do funky rhythms on that E, we can mix it up with a B as well, because B is the fifth. And it doesn't matter if we go above or if we go below either. Bass is very agile, it can do octave jumps, no problems at all. So this is what this would sound like with other instruments involved as well. Here you can see the root note E, and there's the fifth. Here's the root note doing a funky rhythm, there's the fifth, and this time I'm approaching it below the root note. Here's the root note of the third bar, which is G, and there's the fifth. Here's the fourth bar, which is a C major chord, and we're using the fifth of C, which is that G there. What I'll do is let it run through all the different styles, and you can see the different notes being used. And sometimes we're doing this big octave displacement. So in the EDM version, you'll hear that I do an octave up for the fifth, below the root with the fifth note. Those are both E's in the chord of A. We jump around, no problems at all, bass can manage it. In the rock version, we've got roots, we've got fifths, and I'm doing the 3-3-2 groupings. So a group of 3, group of 3, group of 2, group of 3, group of 3, group of 2. Coldplay and loads of people use at the moment. So I'll let that run straight through for you now and leave those dots on the screen. Let's talk about two techniques at once. The first one I want to talk about is octaves of the root. So in this first example here, you can see we've got the root note E, and it's one octave up here. It's going to work really, really well. So here's another octave, and here's another octave, and we can repeat that through any genre. Right, and the other technique we want to talk about is approaching chords from a note adjacent in the previous chord. So if I slide across to here, for example, we are approaching chord 6, which is a C major chord. We're coming from a G major chord. We want to smooth this change over a little bit so it's not quite so blocky. So what I do is when I'm aiming for that target note of a C, I use a note in the chord prior to that that's as close as possible, and that would happen to be the fifth of chord 3, D, and that helps us get a really smooth change between one chord and the next. I do it in the EDM example as well. Here's an adjacent note to the next chord. So let's hear what those all sound like now. So to conclude, when you're writing bass lines, go for the root note if you're not sure about anything else. Give it a funky rhythm. If you're feeling more adventurous, use the fifth, use the octave, and remember that you can use those above and below the notes you've used before. And you can also use the adjacent note targeting the next chord. That just helps smooth over any chord progression transitions. You don't have to use everything all at once. In this last example, it would have been absolutely fine to have stayed on the root note all the way through and then done something interesting on the last time. Remember, when you're arranging your compositions, give and take. So if your bass line's doing something crazy and complicated, you have to make it simple elsewhere in the arrangement. If you've got a really bone-achingly beautiful melody going on, you don't need a complicated bass line happening unless you're Paul McCartney playing something. There's a next video coming along where we're going to talk about using chord tones, chromatic approaches, contramotion, slash chords, all sorts of things coming up. But that's for another time. In the meantime, practice your craft and the art will come, and do all the like and subscribe type stuff. I really enjoy making these videos for you guys, and I'm liking seeing the numbers going up. See you next time.